Well, we've had some nice weather the past few days, and it's supposed to continue for another couple of days, and so I'm hoping to get some painting done. Now, at the beginning of these videos, I always put up that notice that you should make sure and read the full instructions before starting this. Well, I'm guilty of missing that. It turns out that these launch lugs should be half the size that they are. And what I thought had happened was that I had misplaced a launch lug. So I had gone back into my junk box, found another launch lug, and put it on. In reality, what was supposed to have happened was the one launch lug in the kit should have been cut in half so that we had two 1-inch launch lugs. Now, functionally, this isn't going to hurt anything, but it may get in the way of the decals when we get to that point. So I am going to carefully cut back these launch lugs and then fill in the space where they were. The other thing I'm going to be doing at this time is checking for any places along my fillets and along the fins that need some touch-up, maybe some reinforcement. Okay, so you can see here I had a little bit of separation of the channel here, and so I've put some modeling putty along this, and I'm just waiting for it to dry thoroughly before I sand that off. Okay, so for now what I'm going to do is attempt to cut back these launch lugs. And if you don't care exactly where the decals are placed and you happen to have done a similar mistake, I would just leave them alone. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mark that at 1 inch, or about 2.5 centimeters. And I need to do it for both of them. Alright. So now I'm just going to cut gently through this. I don't want to try and do the whole thing at once. And then I'm trying to gauge how much of the glue I want to cut into. So here I'm just getting the top of the fillet. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to do the same thing on this launch lug. Okay, and now to start with, I'm going to cut back just along the top of the fillets here. That way I can see what's going on underneath. Okay, do the same thing here. Okay, and now I'm just going to keep cutting downward a little bit at a time. And eventually I will reach the body tube surface. Okay, and that's what I want. Is I can fill in a little bit of a gap there. Okay. And then I can take some sandpaper here and remove this little bit of excess glue. But probably what I'll do first is put some modeling putty in here to fill in that gap. Okay, come back to my forward one here and continue to try and do the same thing. Okay. Now this has weakened the body tube a little bit, and both of these areas will have to handle the pressure of ejection. So I'm going to take a little bit of super glue here and use that to reinforce the cardboard. And as you can see here, it's wicking right into the exposed cardboard there, where it just kind of sits on top of the glassine layer. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing up here. And once this is completely dried, I can sand off the excess and smooth it into the rest of the body tube. And I think we're going to be okay. At this point, I have sanded smooth the super glue that I put in front of the launch lugs here, and I've given it 2 coats of a filling sandable primer here, and this lets me show where the imperfections still lie. So here you can see where not all of the super glue filled in and smoothed out as nicely. I can fix this either with some more of the primer or with a little bit of modeling putty, even wood filler there. Same thing back here with the aft one. You can see now where the knife cut into the cardboard a little bit there. We've got a little bit of material hanging there in the launch lug. That'll have to get cleaned out. Okay. As we look at the wings here, we see a little bit of grain is still in there. I'm not going to worry about that too much. A little bit of bubbling here in the fillets, not too badly. Okay, and here I decided to go ahead and leave the texture from the printer on this. The really fine stuff will fill in with additional primer, but I didn't want to lose. This appears to be an actual detail piece here that's molded into the tail cone, and I didn't want to lose that by sanding it. Okay, so I'm going to give this a little bit of sanding and touch up a little bit of the rough areas here, and then give it another coat or two of primer. I've added some model putty to some of the low areas of the model here. I also added a little bit of super glue to fill in those little tiny holes in the fillets. So the next time I put on a coat of primer, those should be filled in. And then after I sand this down again, I'm going to hit the whole thing with another coat or two of primer, give that a little bit of light sanding, and then I should be able to move on to the paint. Here my putty has dried and I've sanded it down again, as well as sanding out some of the rougher spots in the primer. And if we look over on the other side where I've been working on the launch lugs, the same thing here. I've added some modeling putty and then sanded that down once again. And so this is going to go back to be sprayed with some more primer. At this point I've sanded down my final coat of primer, and then I wiped this down with a tissue moistened with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. So if it looks kind of swirly here, that's due to the rubbing alcohol. I'm going to let this completely dry so that I don't have any alcohol remnants left, and then I'll start in on the spray paint. Here's the rocket after 2 light coats of paint, and I've done a little bit of sanding here on a couple areas where we had some runs and spots. But now I'm going to take this back and continue coating it until I get the finish I want. At this point my rocket is fully painted, and there may be a few defects there, and the perfectionist may say, no, you can do more. From my point of view, it's good enough. I also have the nose cone here, and it needs a little bit of detail paint on the very top, but beyond that, this is ready for decals, and that's what we'll do next. I've masked off part of the nose cone here so that I can paint the tip of the nose black, and I'm in the process of just taking off the satin sheen here. So just use some 220 or 320 or even up to 400 grit sandpaper just to make the surface slightly rough here to allow the brushed on paint to adhere better. Okay, and then I'll just dust this off, wipe it down with a little bit of alcohol, and then I'm going to paint this with brushed on black acrylic paint. Now we have just a few other things to do before the decals go on. And these little parts are in the small parts bag. The first thing to do is just scrape off any excess plastic that's still hanging on there. You can usually do this with a fingernail. But we have two antenna mounts here. And then also the pitot tube. And frankly, I don't know if that's being pronounced right or if it's pito or what. But this will also, this comes in two pieces. So the antenna mounts are single piece and there's two of them. These two pieces are going to go together like this. And we actually do wait until we painted the rocket to put these on. And so the first thing I'm going to do is glue this together with just a little bit of super glue. Alright, I've actually got some running out there. That is going to be more than enough. And I really only want a thin film on here, so I'm going to take a tissue and just wipe some of that off. Having that large amount on there is just going to make it run and ooze and take longer to dry. Okay, and I'm just going to firmly hold that together for just a little bit. Now while the tube is drying, I'm going to mark where it has to go. So according to the instructions, it's going to be in line with our tube here and 1/10 of an inch from the end of the airframe. Now again, most of my rulers don't measure in 1/10 of an inch, so I'm going to kind of estimate it here. Straighten it out again. Okay, so right about there. Turn, that's not as in line as I would like. Let's try this again. So about there. Okay, and here we just need to scrape a little bit of the paint off. I'm not going to go the full length of the plastic piece or the full width because I don't want any uncovered primer showing. Okay, so this is going to go on like that. Almost got it backwards. Alright, this should be facing forward. Like that. Okay, so I'm now going to take just a little tiny bit of thick CA. Make a film of that. on there, and then line it up with the tube there. Okay. We'll just let that sit and dry for a few minutes. Okay, now according to the instructions, you could mount these just by themselves, or you can actually build little antennas for them by taking a paper clip and then cut 2 pieces of wire from that are about 1 inch long, so roughly the same length as the bases here. So I'm going to go find a paper clip and we'll do that part. Okay, so I have my 2 little antennae here, and so these need to go in a little hole there, and I found that hole is really tight, and so you may have to take your pliers and use that to help push it in. And be careful, I'm going to bring my finger down here so if this thing slips it doesn't go through my finger. Okay, so I'm just going to work that back and forth, and that's in there well enough now. And then I'm going to do it with the other one here too. Okay, and you do run the risk of bending your antennae that way, but they'll bend back. Okay, an alternative to this is you can hold your antenna wire in a flame for a few seconds and then kind of melt it into place. Okay, that's going far enough there. So now I'm just going to put a little dot of super glue on that. And then reinsert the antenna wire. There we go, and I'll let that dry. And if you need to, you can rebend the antenna wire after the glue has dried. So we'll do the same thing with this one. So I will let those dry as well. Now if we go back to our instructions here, the antennas are mounted just a little bit shy of 90 degrees from the P-dot tube. And so if you draw a line or imagine a line extending from the wing edge here and going forward, we're going to glue this on at 0.2 inches toward the P-dot tube and 0.4 inches away from the forward edge of the airframe. And so just like I did with the P-dot tube, I scraped away a little of the paint here, and I'm going to apply some thick CA to the surface of the mount. And again, I actually want a thin but uniform surface there. Alright, and then I'll glue it to my finger. Okay. So this will go on here. And I'm going to sight down, and again this should be just a little bit off from the line of the wing, and that looks pretty good there. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes and I'll do the other antenna off camera. At last we are ready for the decals, and there's a whole detailed list of where and how and what to apply in the instructions, and you'll also often need to refer to the placement sheet. And the placement sheet is in the inside of the pages here in the instructions. So this gives you some detailed views of where everything goes. You'll also probably want to have the illustration handy from the box here. Now, I am not going to do every single decal on camera here. I'm just going to do a couple of them as examples because this is going to be probably several hours worth of work. And I would really like to get this video finished. Okay. Now, on the water slide decals here, for most of them, the frames that you see here are not part of the decal. So you want to cut inside those frames before you put them on. Okay. Now, the hatches here look like they should have their frames, and I think that's what this is telling me here, that the frame is part of the decal. For these and for these little tiny ones down here. Okay, so they recommend first putting on the smaller of this roll pattern here, and so that's the one I will start with as well. So this is the first one here, and this will be applied at 3 1/4 inches, if I remember right. Yeah, so here's our band. It's going to go 3 1/4 inches from the forward end, or the forward end edge of the airframe there. And it will go around such that it's going to go right here just as the flare tube tapers there. And so that'll be the end point on either edge of it. Okay, so we're going to need a small dish of water here. And I just use it at room temperature. There's no need to either heat it up or cool it off. Alright, so I'm just going to plop that in there and let the paper get saturated. Alright, and then I'm going to go ahead and come back to the model here while that's happening. And I'm going to mark very lightly the measurement where it says it should be. Okay, so right about there. And about there. Okay, so this looks to be saturated. And then what I'm going to do, oh, see, that's already moving off, so it's ready to go. Okay, and what I want is this little piece coming off already. And so I'm going to set that here. Right, and then I'm just going to lightly pull this around. Okay, and now we're running into the launch lug, and I didn't get a warning of that in the instructions. Okay, so it looks like we're actually going to have to cut this. So I'm going to go going to line it up there and here. You want to do this fairly quickly. As it dries out, it's going to be very hard to move. Right. And on this side, I'm going to go ahead and gently pull that taut and straight. And then try to align both of them there. And then I'll go ahead and trim off that piece there. Okay. So I don't know if that measurement was misprinted or we actually had to do that part. But there it is. Okay. So it looks like what we're going to have to do is that the navy here is going to have to be cut separately. Okay, and so this part here will be the band shown here in the illustration, and then the navy will get turned 90 degrees and then reinserted where this cutout will be. Okay, and then the other side of it over here will go on the bottom side of the rocket. Right, so this, the launch lug side, is actually the top of the rocket. And so that's where this part will go. And this is also going to get split. Okay, so we're going to have 3 bands and 3 bands and cut there, and that's going to fit between the wings and the flare tube, and that's going to be actually down in here. Alright, and then this one we're going to cut here with the notch out of it, and also do the navy, and then go from there. So I think we've got it figured out. Okay, so first, I'm just going to cut out the navy piece here so it's out of my way. Okay, the one that actually says Navy, or will say it when we're done here, this is going to go like this. So we're looking at the top end of the top side of the rocket, and this will go right above the tail cone. Okay, so it's going to be right there, and should meet up with the edges right along the fins, and it does. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the water. Alright, that's already floating off. These decals come off really quick. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pull this on. I'm just going to pull it over and up just a little bit. Okay, and now I can take a tissue and squeegee off the excess water there. Take that dampened tissue here. Alright, and then we'll do the navy decal, and this is going to go right along the fin edge here. Okay. Like I did with the last one, I'm just going to adjust this a little bit. Okay. And now I'm going to flip this over. Okay, and so this one should go here. And then this one should go here. Okay, so the lettering here in between should be oriented so that a person reading it would be reading it from the bottom. Okay, and those are both also going to align here with the tail cone. So I've got just a little line there you can still see from construction. Okay, I gotta get my orientation correct again. Okay, so this is going to come down right there. And once again, oh, that moved. There we go, and I'm just going to take a tissue once more here, squeegee off the moisture. Okay, and then we'll repeat that with this one. Alright, put the side on. Okay, once again we'll position this. Just so. Straighten it out a bit. Okay. Squeegee that one down as well. Okay, now that's all I'm going to do on the video here. In the end, we'll have all the rest of the decals placed. We have a couple of small vinyl trim decals here, and the instructions do a good job of telling you where to put those. And then there are 4 U.S. Navy Stars and Stripes emblems that will also go on. They're a self-stick one, and they're elsewhere in the kit. Once you have all of the decals on, I highly recommend overspraying the whole thing with a clear coat to protect those and keep them from scraping off. So I will leave you here. I hope eventually that you finish this kit too. This is one of the longest kits I've had to build. And have a good flight, a safe recovery, and please check out some of my other videos.